Hello, everyone. Over the years, well, first of all, I don't have a lot of experience being on YouTube doing live streams. Over the years, people have asked me about growing Christmas trees. Well, I might do this in several parts, this subject. Okay, first of all, before anybody asks any questions, the first thing you have to think of is how you're going to sell these Christmas trees. It takes anywhere from 8 to 10, 8 to 12 years to grow a Christmas tree. If a person sells these trees wholesale, you're going to need a really big tractor because you're going to need to power a Howie tree baler. A Howie tree baler, you put the tree inside the baler and it wraps it up with rope. And hey, frog, and hey, be charming. Now, to power a machine like that, a Howie tree baler like that is going to run maybe $10,000. And you're going to need a tractor that's probably 30 to 40 horsepower. And if you sell these trees wholesale, let's say you wanted to sell 1,000 trees wholesale, you're going to need a lot of manpower to cut these trees down, carry them out of the field, put them, hi Debbie, pull them through the tree baler, and load them on a truck. So I'm going to discuss what I've done growing Christmas trees where the customer cuts the tree down. Well, before somebody even wants to think of starting a Christmas tree farm, you got to find out what type of soil you have for growing trees. What type of climate will suit the trees? Back in the 1950s and 60s, some of the biggest selling trees were Scotch pine. Nowadays, people don't want Scotch pine. Scotch pines have real long, picky needles. Once they're about 7 foot tall, the lower branches get too thick to bend, and they won't go through um, a tree baler without breaking them. Even if you're in a climate that'll, in my area, okay, people want trees they can't grow. We can't grow Fraser firs around here because we're too low of an elevation, or noble firs. And like I said, it takes 8 to 12 years to grow a tree. And then when it comes to planting these trees, first of all, you got to figure out the type of soil you have. It's called soil series. Back in the 60s, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Army engineers went around the country. It took years, and they analyzed. Hi, Pamela Brown. They took samples and analyzed the soil. They used to have books called for each county, the United U.S. Soil Survey. Well, the thing is, I'm going to talk about basically what I grow. I grow mainly Douglas firs, blue spruce. I've grown Canaan firs. With the drought we had last summer, nobody would believe that deer went up to a lot of the Canaans and ate the bottom branches off the tree. Now, I want to get back to the soils. If you're gonna grow trees, you're gonna have to plant them in soil. Well, you got to figure out if the soil is even tillable. Some big tree farms, they have a big tractor with a plow and disc. They cut into the soil and pulverize it to powder. But then the thing is, these trees do better when you grow them on soil that's been tilled. Now, if the ground is too rocky, how you gonna maintain the weeds with a tractor? In my area, I use a disc harrow and a PTO 3-point hitch mounted rotary tiller. Now, Debbie, and yeah, I know because I have family. I have cousins. My grandparents actually moved to Richmond, Virginia area. Now, if you get up in the mountains of Virginia, it's a different story. Like I said, you have to have a way to prepare the soil to plant the little trees. And if the soil is really steep, you're going to have to, you don't want, it's like this. By federal and state law, if a person starts tilling more than 1 acre of ground, you're going to have a soil and water conservation plan. Up until about 1994, 1995, the U.S. Department of Agriculture used to cost share a small amount of farmers doing what's called soil conservation work on the property. And that meant terracing the ground off. If you look at videos of my property, my whole property here at Grange Avenue is on a 3 to 8% grade. And I found it's better to make the blocks small. I space my trees at 5 foot 7.5 inches per acre. When I plant little trees, I have a 400-foot long plant line that has beads every 15 inches apart, and I count 4.5 beads, and I use a stick to get it spaced the other direction. If you don't get these rows perfectly spaced, you could run the little trees over when the weeds get high. And I wouldn't advise anybody going out there buying ground with real estate prices being what they are to grow Christmas trees. But the thing with the spacing is, okay, I know some growers that space them 5 foot apart. If you space trees 5 foot 7.5 inches apart, you can plant about 1,200 Christmas trees on an acre. Like I said before, it takes 8 to 12 years to get these trees a size that you can sell them. And the cost of little trees has gone up tremendously. Back when I started in the 80s, you could buy a 2-2 transplant, which is a two-year-old seedling that's dug up and replanted in the ground. That's about 12 to 18 inches tall for about 45 cents a piece. Nowadays, if you want to buy 1,000 transplants, you're talking of investment of maybe $1,200. You can look on certain websites like Alpha Nurseries, New Life Nurseries, Needlefast Evergreens. These trees have gotten expensive. Then you're talking about another $300 to ship them here. What I do is I've been buying trees for years from a nursery in Michigan called Alpha Nurseries. They have two seedlings that are about 12 to 18 inches tall. What I do is I take the best looking seedlings and I plant those in the field, and the smaller ones I put in a transplant bed. And the cost of the equipment's gone astronomical. If you plant trees in cultivated ground and just mow around them the first year, you're not going to get many of them to survive at all. The only company I found in this country, I use Kubota tractors. They're actually made in Gainesville, Georgia. The reason I use Kubotas is because they're narrow. John Deere, Mahindra, Coyote, all their tractors are too wide. Most of their small tractors are about 45 to 47 inches wide. Now the Kubota I use, I have two of them. One of them's got almost 4,500 hours. I use the B7500 to mow, and I use the B2401 that I bought 4 years ago to ride a till. Then you got to remember, if you start a tree farm, you're going to need two tractors, one to till, one to mow. The cost of these Kubotas, back in 2003, I bought a brand new B7500 TDN that was $9,600. And when it comes to picking out tractors, it's better to have one that has a manual transmission, not the hydrostatic. The hydrostatic, if they break down, they cost a whole lot to repair. Now, the B2401 is a manual transmission. Some people think, well, why not get the hydrostatic? Because you don't have a clutch. Well, I have yet to have replaced the clutch on my 2003 Kubota. The thing is, okay, to get a new Kubota, a narrow one, you're talking about $15,000 investment. And over the years, I've gone through a lot of rotary tillers. I found it's better to spend the money and get a good tiller. I'm using the Land Pride 42-inch rear tine tiller. And I'll tell you why rear tine is better. If you're using back in the early 2000s, I bought because Kubota for a couple of years didn't have any narrow tractors. I bought one of their BX models, which is subcompact. Well, if you have a forward tine tiller, you know what can happen to the machine? If you're going really slow to get through sod, the tiller can push on the PTO of the machine. Back in 2006, it happened and it split the whole transmission, and I had to get the whole transmission casing replaced. It's not going to happen with a rear tine tiller. Now, one of these tillers, they are an upkeep. You got to change the gearbox fluid, keep it greased. The other tillers I had, back when I started, Kubota came out. The first tractors they sold in the U.S. was the old B7400. They were really underpowered. They had a 16 horsepower engine and a 600 cc 3-cylinder diesel engine. That Kubota would always run too hot. The new B2401, I can run that thing and the thermostat always stays in the middle. But it's a lot of work. Every 100 hours, you got to change the motor oil on one of these Kubotas and the filter, and every 300 hours, you got to change the transmission fluid. And actually, on the old B7500, It's every 300 hours, and it takes about 12 quarts of super UDT transmission fluid. And I was shocked. Last week, I went up to Urban Henry, my local Kubota dealer, and I couldn't believe the price of the transmission filter for the B2401. Just the filter was $49.88, and with the cost of fuels going up from Joe Biden, just a 5 gallon, and that machine holds about 14 quarts of Super UD2. The cost of that now is like $140 for a 5 gallon bucket. But if you want to get into growing Christmas trees, you got to think of all these things. Now, if you sell trees retail, you're gonna have to have a place for these customers to park. Back in the early 2000s, we put a driveway in a parking lot big enough to hold about 40 cars at a time, and the cost of it back then was about $5,000. And stones have doubled in price, and the cost of getting people to excavate to move soil, because if you put a driveway in, you're going to have to strip off the topsoil and put down probably 6 or 8 inches of stone. People have to think of that. People think you plant these trees. Hey, Larry Schulte, and Paul Scott, you think a person plants these trees, they're going to make all this money. Then the thing is, like I said, people don't realize when these trees are little, it's easier starting a new block because all the trees are the same size. When I start a new block of trees, after tilling the ground, you won't believe what I'm out here doing in the summer. I go around with a grubbing hoe and pull the weeds out around each tree by hand. Now, because the thing with these trees is everybody has the idea of a perfect tree. You're not going to sell all your trees at the same size. Before I was semi-retired, I was involved with a family member, and we were growing trees I was growing trees on about 20 acres of ground. It was, some of it was hilly, some of it was flat. Well, one year we decided to hire a guy with a bulldozer to come out and push out all the stumps. We found that was an ordeal because the roots of these trees can go into the subsoil almost 2 feet deep. It took days on, let's say, each 2.5 acre block just to gather up all the stumps, put them in a wheelbarrow, and burn them. Now, the thing is, then when the trees get bigger, unfortunately, trees do come out with diseases. If you're going to grow Douglas firs, they have problems with an airborne fungus called ribdocline needlecast. And the only way to combat that is to spray the trees with a sprayer using trichlorothianol. And then if you grow cane and balsam firs, which is a variety of balsam, they're going to come down with balsam twig aphid in the spring. They get a spray with a pesticide, and in the fall they can come down with a cryptomerius scale. And the type of thing I found years ago, my sister and I, we bought one of these tractor-powered sprayers, and we found we wasted so much chemical, it wasn't even funny. I resorted to buying, back in the late 90s, I bought a Still 400 mist blower, where the thing holds 3.8 gallons of water, and I found it's somewhere just to go around with the mist blower and spray each tree individually so you don't waste chemicals, because nobody wants to get pesticides all over the property. Now, a lot of growers in Pennsylvania on steep hills, after they plant these trees, the ground's too rocky to get through with a rotary tiller. Think of it like this: a rotary tiller, I showed one video showing what a rotary tiller does. A rotary tiller has blades that turn the soil over. If the ground has a lot of rock, it will destroy that tiller in no time. Rocks can get caught between the blades and the housing of the tiller, and if it gets stuck, even though it has a slip clutch, you can damage your transmission. People have to think, north of me in Macungie, PA, the ground is really nice. It's got a lot of limestone, but the problem is some of the farmers up that way have rocks the size of bricks. And if you till ground that's got rocks the size of bricks, you're going to beat a tiller up. The other alternative is to go through with a disc harrow. But then if you go through that with a disc harrow and rocky ground, it's going to wear the blades out much quicker. Like around here, we got rocks on the ground, but they're not really that big. And the thing I found in my lifetime growing trees is the frost will uproot the rocks and bring them to the surface. Every year I go on the tilled ground and I walk around with a 5-gallon bucket, and I put the rocks in a bucket, and then I dump the rocks on the side of the driveway, just to put them somewhere. And actually, over the years, the way people park along the side of the driveway, the stones sink in. You figure having even if you put a driveway in a parking lot, you're going to have to get stones probably every decade. Back when we did this, when we started this tree farm, I think the price of stone was $4 or $5 a ton. Now, a price of stone from the closest quarry is $22 a ton. That's why I say just to put a driveway in a parking lot to sell any trees, it could run depending on how long the driveway is and the cost of excavating. It could cost $10,000 or $12,000. Now the thing is, with the tax implications, you can deduct all this stuff, but 8 years of filling out forms for the IRS of all the losses is very complicated. People don't realize all the paperwork involved if you have a business operating at a loss. And my CPA, George Bancroft, he's told me that he knows people that have gotten into the farming business just as a tax write-off, and that's why he does their taxes. Because some guys they made a lot of money and they want to get do outdoors work, where there's people in this industry they're doing this just as a tax write-off. I've made all my money that I've invested by growing Christmas trees. I didn't get into this as a tax write-off. When I started growing trees at the other property my sister owns, I didn't make any money off that property for 7 years. All I did was work out there, and I worked part-time for my dad, helping him dig trees and do landscaping. But people don't realize how labor-intensive it is and what the cost is. And like I said, that with inflation, when the trees get about waist high, you could stop tilling and then mowing. And even if you want a brand new Kubota tractor to get a half decent brush hog, that's like another $2,000 plus investment. Now, I'd love to know who Frog really is. I think I know who he is, but I'm not going to say on the live stream. Now, any questions about growing trees? I think I got a lot of the information in that I wanted to tell people about. Then the thing is, if you're growing trees, and most of the United States, you're going to have a problem with deer. I know of people that got in this industry by talking to other people that they gave up. What the deer did to their trees is just awful. Like I said, this past winter, the deer went up to some of the 2 to 3 foot tall Canaan firs and ate all the new growth off to the trunks. They almost look like umbrellas. This past year, the deer damage probably close to 700 of my Canaan firs. If I didn't have Canaans, they will eat literally anything. That's why 6 to 7 months out of the year, I'm out here with my slug gun picking deer off. I haven't had a chance to check your channel out in a while, Frog Artifacts. Well, any questions about growing trees? Because with all the stuff happening in the world, I thought I would just stick to trees tonight. But as I said, if a person wants to start a tree farm, you got to research the soil and find out what kind of trees will grow in the ground. And like I said earlier, if you start just tearing up ground the way people are, and you don't have a soil and water conservation plan, you can be in hot water with the state DEP and the U.S. Department of Agriculture. That's why it's better to get all this stuff worked out before you decide to even start a tree farm. And I think I said earlier, if you want to sell these wholesale, it's a completely different business. You got to find a market. My sister and her husband, they buy at least 1,000 pre-cut trees a year. If somebody brings in pre-cut trees, you can only fit about 200 of them on a big truck, and the cost of trees have just gone through the roof. Because if you sell pre-cut trees, you're going to need to have a way to stand all these trees up. So I only do cut your own. Well, thanks for the comment, Frog. You won't find a more professional man anywhere on the internet. Well, the thing is, I've looked at other people's videos about tree farms, and it's more that they're just showing their equipment. They're not telling people, how they grow the trees. And when I plant trees in cultivated ground, I don't dig a hole with a shovel. I was talking about that on a friend's channel last week. I use a nursery spade, and I can't believe the price of those things are doubled. When I rototilled the ground, uh, I after I kill all the sod, I use a nursery spade and just stick the spade in the ground and dig it up a little. And I use the end of the spade to put the tree in the soil. Hey, Starfire. Well, I haven't had any kind of fight with Craig or anything. It's like Craig's decided to go his way, and I've decided to go my way. And actually, Craig did a video, an AI video of me. I decided to take it down because it's like this. I lift weights. The video he did, it was nice he sent it to me, but the video he did, that's not me. You want to see me? This is me. No, we never had a gaming out. I've never seen you before, Starfire. I'm not sure which channel I know you from. It's like I float around YouTube. I'm a lone wolf. I look at it like this. There's a lot of people out there that have YouTube channels. Two people, I'm not going to go into details. I'll say this though, too many people are competitive. I do this as a hobby. Being on YouTube isn't my whole life. Some people, I've met people in my life, they act like, they're so great being a moderator. Who the hell cares? Yeah, I'm an actual weightlifter. Actually, I did something to my shoulder in February, and I've had to cut back on the amount of weights I lift. I keep forgetting that I'm 64 years old. Up until about a year ago, I was doing I'd get down the basement, do a warm-up set, and do 3 to 4 reps using 300 pounds. Right now, I'm only using a little more than my body weight because my shoulder is just killing me. And my wife says I had to see an orthopedic doctor. You know what? If I went to an orthopedic doctor, they would tell me to stop doing what I'm doing. And I have a friend who's a customer, 72 years old. He knows a lot more about me than anybody on YouTube does. And he's saying, Jim, why are you still working? And I said, because I said, God God gives everyone a purpose. I'm here to grow trees and provide, trees to people that want Christmas trees. And every now and then he stops down and talks to me. Well, I think that's pretty much all I said about trees. Um, Now we can get to another subject because I've seen online tonight that the U.S. is moving people out of certain areas of the Middle East. I think we're getting very close to something happening in Israel. And I saw tonight, even though I don't like them on Hal Turner News Radio, that they're having riots in Atlanta, Georgia. Well, I think the shit is going to hit the fan. And I'll tell you, like I know family members, let's just say a niece and her husband, they'll probably go to one of these No King, whatever the hell it's called, rallies. I predict this is going to happen. And I hope I'm wrong. I think some of these people that came in this country illegally are look at it like this. Say somebody's at a rally and it gets kind of out of hand, and one of the protesters have a firearm and starts shooting innocent people. You know what they're going to do? They're going to blame it on the police, or if Trump has to send the military there. I'm afraid the shit's going to hit the fan on the 14th. I just hope that I'm wrong. But for some reason, I have a lot of good foresight. I'm happy. Yeah, I know. I've been following all the stuff, frogs, artifacts. I'm just happy that the weather this year we're getting plenty of rain. Actually, there's people that have made fun of me with the manure and think I'm crazy. People don't realize most of the soil in this country has been severely depleted, and the only way to replenish the soil is that something natural, animal manure, compost. 20 years ago, when fertilizer was cheap, I used fertilizer. And you know what I found? The fertilizer really didn't improve the growth or the color of the tree. That's why I have a manure guy. And anybody that's in farming, everybody needs a manure guy. I think manure can end a lot of problems in the world. Could even bring world peace. You figure, look at it like this. There's areas of Africa, Central South America. They can only grow one crop maybe every so many years because the ground is so depleted that if they grow another crop, you won't even have much of a harvest from it. People people in this country have to go back to doing things the old ways, organically. You figure my area of the country, southeastern Pennsylvania, this area, most of it's been farmed that isn't land developed right now. Any farms that have been around here, they've been farmed continuously since the 1700s, 1800s. And if you don't put something back in the soil, you're not going to have much of a crop. Starfire, I got a question for you. What channel did you see me on? You probably saw me on Craig's channel. Because I've seen that Craig's doing stuff again on his own. I mean, it doesn't matter to me what anybody does. I'm basically like, sometimes I go on somebody's channel. I've been on channels nobody here even knows about. And everybody's got a different interest. How many horses do you have, Debbie? Because around here, the people that have horses are the people, look at it like this. Most of the farm ground, there's hardly any farming left in my area. Most of the people have horses here. They have an old farmhouse and they have a barn. And you take, most of the farms were subdivided decades ago. Because according to the manure guy, I see people down the road, they have a farmhouse and a barn, and they might have 2 or 3 acres of ground. So they basically have to buy a lot of hay to feed the horses, and they end up with all this manure, and then they got to find a way to get rid of it. Because I know the Amish are self-sustaining, and a lot of the Mennonites are. If a person has horses and you have enough ground, just take the manure out of the barn and put it back into the soil. Yeah, I agree with you. The type of soil I'm growing trees on is Redington salt loam and Penn salt loam. Like I said earlier, the soil survey isn't 100% accurate. We have areas here where the soil is a heavy clay. Then we got areas where the soil is basically real silty with not a lot of clay, with a sandstone or shale bedrock. I've got areas of my property down by, if you look at my videos, we have a drainage area that goes through here. Actually, when we bought the ground, the deed said 11.66 acres, but it's technically 11.3 because they measure from the middle of the road, the surveyors. We have 11.3 acres. And because we have a dry creek by a drainage area that goes through the property, we had wet spots. And about, let's see, maybe 20 years ago, I had some tile drains put in on the embankment of where the drainage area starts. But even putting tile drains in, there's areas of the property where the ground has no underground drains, where no matter how much rain we get in a day or two, you could tell the soil because it's got a lot of small sandstone in it. I mean, we got shale sandstone, and it's like this. Some people think, oh, sand is glass. Okay, when it comes to classifying soil, it's done by particle size. You have clay-sized particles, which is really clay. You got silt-sized particles, then you got sand-sized particles. You could have a sandy soil where there's no sandstone, where the soil weathered from schist, gneiss, or even limestone or shale. Well, 2 horses is a lot of work. You figure, I don't know how much hay you go through, but around here, a bale of hay is like anywhere from like $9 to $11. And I'm not sure how much hay these horses even consume in a week. But for somebody to have horses with the cost of everything, you must be a real horse lover. I think, okay, I've gone about a half an hour. I think I've gotten everything across that I wanted to say. All I can say is anybody that lives in a big city, just be careful. I looked up on the map a few days ago when I found posts on Anon up about the map, and they got stuff planned in my area, not exactly here. North of us, because I'm in Skippack Township, there's nothing for Collegeville or Skippack. There's a protest plan for Pottstown, which that's an unincorporated village, that's a borough, and there's a lot of migrants there. And the same for Harleysville. The shit's probably going to hit the fan in Philadelphia, which I'm 25 miles from. And there's one plan at our county seat Norristown, and that has a population of about 40,000 people, and there's a lot of newcomers living there. Debbie, how much? I never met you before. I'm glad you stopped up. How much do you think it costs a month to feed 2 horses and hay? Because I know, like, anyone that has a farm where you have enough ground for the horse to graze, they like because I never had horses. I assume they like fresh grass, but they do like hay. And actually, I even once in a while I get some goat manure mixed with the horse manure and pig manure because some people have a few horses and they have a few pet goats and a few pet pigs. Because some people like just having some livestock around, and not just to eat it, just to have livestock to get back to nature, get back to agriculture. Well, any more questions about growing trees? Because I think I'm going to end it soon. Okay, well, thanks to everyone that showed up um, on YouTube to watch me. Um, my sister has chickens. I mean, she's got a 42-acre farm, but a couple of years ago, we don't know. They think it was a weasel. We think it was a person. Somebody went in there and broke every chicken's neck. Um, I wish I had chickens, but it's like this. I don't have. In order to have chickens, you need a building for them. It's a lot of work taking care of chickens too. And I don't know if you've ever seen me before, Debbie. I have one dog. I'm a German Shepherd lover. The dog I have now she's half wild dog. We got a rescue Carolina dog Shepherd 9 years ago this past spring. Okay, well, thanks everybody for showing up. I'm going to end it because I'm going to have to take Holly out soon. But everybody, it's like I said, everybody, I wouldn't go into any major, I would avoid these demonstrations. And some of the stuff, just like on Truth Social, people are making posts. Okay, thanks everybody for watching my show and have a good night.